Okay, this chus we're learning should be a panacea. We're going to start Gimel Amid Beis. Starts from Amalei Rish Lakish L'Rab Yochanan. It's 9 lines from the bottom. Daf 3b. Okay, we've been discussing the Kain Gadol being sequestered for 7 days before Yom Kippur. And we said that the source for that was Amar Rabba Bar Bachana, it was a statement from Rabbi Yochanan, Amar Rabbi Yumi Bar Chilki, Amar Machsi Baridi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, quotes a pasuk. The pasuk was in Parshas Shmini, the end of Parshas Tzav, where it says, Kashriyasa b'yem ezeh tzivus imasi l'chaper aleichem. As he has done on this day, so has God commanded to do to atone for you. Follow? So he says that lasais means that extra word lasais to do. That's referring to the para, to the paraduma. And lechaper, to atone, means for Yom Kippur. It means all of these 3 times, the inauguration, which was Parshas Tzav and Shmini, and preparing for Yom Kippur and preparing for the paraduma, the kayan that's doing that needs to be separated for 7 days. Amalei Rish Lakish L'Rab Yochanan. Rish Lakish says to Rabbi Yochanan, Mehecha ki yalfas lo. Where are you learning this from? The kayan needs to be separated for 7 days. Miluim. You learn it from Miluim, from the inauguration. Ima Miluim, if you're learning from the inauguration, kol hakasav b'makiv behem. When it comes to the Miluim, everything needs to be done perfectly. And if you don't do it correctly, then it makes it possible. If that's the case, then what would happen if a Kain Gadol doesn't get separated before Yom Kippur for 7 days? It would be possible. So afachanami kol hakasav b'makiv. If you're learning from Miluim, then it's probably a real limud. And anything that would go wrong with the Yom Kippur service would be possible. If you say, okay, fine, so big deal, so what? Well, but our Mishnah says, they designate another kayan in case this kayan becomes pasul. Another kayan gadol, in case this kayan gadol becomes pasul. Now, like Tani Mafrishin, but it doesn't say that the kayan that they designate gets separated. You follow? So what's going to happen here? This kayan becomes pasul, right? And they need the new kayan. The problem is the new kayan wasn't separated for 7 days beforehand. They just designated him. They didn't separate. They didn't put him into a room in the Beis Hamikdash. So what are they going to do with him? They're going to use him because this kayan. How could they use him? You're learning from Miluim. If you don't do it perfectly, it's ma'akiv. Ma'akiv means it holds back from being acceptable. Well, we can answer this. You know how you answer it? You say like this. Maskinin, when it said that we designate another kain gadol in case this kain gadol becomes tamei, what we meant was we separate another kain gadol. We said we designate, but we mean more than that. We mean separate. That way, if this kain gadol actually does become tamei, we have to use the new one, the replacement. So he's already been separated. We can use him. The only we would understand that it means that maskin and designate means separate. The Gemara says that's a little bit of an issue because the wording is not consistent. Listen, then why by this kayan do we say separate, and by the second replacement kayan we say we designate? You should have said both designate or both separate. If designate means separate, then say both designate and say. Obviously, the fact that you're changing the language means that one of them is separated and one of them is designated and not separated. So it's a little bit of an issue. So this is Rish Lakish asking Rabbi Yochanan, his brother-in-law. Right? Yeah, the Einel Davar Seifel is if you're going to suspect that someone may die. Here we're not suspecting that, we're just suspecting that he may become tamei. No, to become tamei, people become tamei regularly, and it was a real concern. So we have someone else separated, but to suspect that the person may die, that was too much of a concern. And then to extend that to his wife, okay. Amar lei, Rabbi Yochanan says that. Elamar hechi yalafla. So if that's the case, where do you learn it from? Yeah, this is Rabbi Yochanan talking to Rish Lakish. You have a good question, but what's your solution? Right? I understand the problem, but what are you suggesting? So Amar Misinai says, I don't have the problem. I learned it from somewhere else. I'm not learning from Niluim. I learned it from Sinai. What happened at Sinai? Well, we got the Torah. And over there it says that, let's see, the Ksiv, it says, Vayishken Kvod Hashem al Har Sinai, Vayechaseu anan sheishes yamim, Vayikro Moshe b'yom hashvi. Okay. In order to understand this and see what's going on, I have to read to you the pasuk, and I'll tell you what Rashi says, so you'll get what's happening here. There's a little bit of an issue. The Jewish people reached Sinai on the 1st of Sivan. Okay, in about 27 days. Right now we're the 1st of Sivan, they reached Sinai. Then 6 or 7 days later, they received the Torah. Then Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to get the Luchais. They received the Torah, they received the 10 Commandments. It was without the tablets. It was just God speaking, or the first two, and then Moshe speaking. Then he goes up for 40 days to get the tablets. So he's going up on either the 7th or the 8th of Sivan to get the Luchais. On the 16th of Tammuz, the Luchas are broken. I'm sorry, they make the Egel. On the 17th of Tammuz, Moshe Rabbeinu comes down and breaks the Luchas. Then he goes back up again afterwards to ask for atonement. Comes down Erev Rosh Chodesh. He goes back up Rosh Chodesh to get the second Luchas, and he comes back down on Yom Kippur. Hence, Yom Kippur is the full atonement and receive the second one. Okay. There's one pasuk here that
what day of Elul? What day of Elul, Rabbi?
Rosh Chodesh Elul. That's why we blow the shofar on Rosh Chodesh Elul, is because to announce that Moshe was going back up. We should have an accurate count, not like we had in the past. We messed up the count. Yeah, we should have an accurate. Okay. So in Parshas Mishpatim it says, Moshe. Yeah, let's do it like this. Moshe ascended partway up the mountain, and the cloud covered the mountain. It's the end of. And the glory of God rested on Mount Sinai, which the cloud covered for 6 days. And on the 7th day, he called out to Moses from the midst of the cloud. You hear what's happening? The cloud covered the mountain. Actually, in the Hebrew, it's not so clear. But Yishken Kvod Hashem al Har Sinai. The glory of God rested on Har Sinai. Vayechaseu ha'anan sheishes yamim. And the cloud covered it or him for 7 days. There's a pronoun there. Vayechasehu. The cloud covered it or him for 6 days. And Hashem calls out to Moshe on the 7th day from the cloud. When is the 6 days? When is the 6 days? And when is the 7th day? So easy to understand would be the 6 days is from Rosh Chodesh Sivan till the 6th of Sivan, and on the 7th of Sivan the Torah was given. That would make sense. Rashi over here says, Rabbi Seinu Cholkim B'Davar. The note, and Rashi says Yoma Daf Daled. Machlekes over here. Some say, yeah, this is Rosh Chodesh until Shavuos, until the giving of the Torah. Some say, no. This is when Moshe goes back up after he receives the Torah. The first 6 days of that is he's being held in preparation, and then there's going to be another 34 days where he's going to be regularly there. So those 40 days are divided, this and that, there's 34 and 6. Okay? There's two pshatim here when this is. So let's take a look. What happens is, where do you learn it from? He says, I learned it from Sinai. This is Reish Lakish talking to Rabbi Yochanan. It says, Diksiv, Vayishkan Kved Hashem alai Sinai. The glory of God is on Sinai, on the Mount Sinai. Vayechaseyu ha'anan sheishas yomim v'yikro Moshe b'yom hashvi. Michti. Says, let's see. We're on the second to the bottom line. Ksiv, v'yikro Moshe b'yom hashvi. It says that Hashem calls to Moshe on the seventh day. My sheishas yomim. So of course there were 6 days before. Zeh b'nei Av. It's coming to teach us shekol hanichnas b'machane shechina. Anything that's coming into the camp of holiness, it's on Pisha Shisha. You have to separate 6 days before. That's the source for the Kayin Gadol, being separated. Questions? What's the question? It's supposed to be 7. It says Va'anan Shivatanan. That's cute. A good answer, but that's not what the Mishnah says. The Mishnah says 7 days, and you're telling me, based on the pasuk, 6 days. So he says, Masnizin Rav Yehuda ben Beseiri. Our Mishnah is not what I'm explaining, Reish Lakish is saying. I'm explaining if we would have to separate 6 days. Our Mishnah is following opinion of Rav Yehuda ben Beseiri that says he has to separate 7 days. Why? Because the Chayish L'Tumas Beisi, he's concerned that maybe the Kohen Gadol is going to be together with his wife. And while he's together with her, she's going to realize that she's in Nida. So she's tummy 7. He's going to be tummy 7. You have to separate. He's going to be tummy for 7 days. So because a boy only does tummy for 7 days, so we separate them from his wife for those 7 days prior, just in case. Yeah, I saw the Mefarshim ask. Naftali, you asked this yesterday. They don't have to put him in the Beis Hamikdash for him to separate from his wife. They can separate in the house. So it's got to be a combination of that he's supposed to also be practicing and learning and that. We'll see. Amar lei Rabbi Yochanan l'Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan says to. Right. But if this is the whole thing is to separate, the whole thing is to prepare, and then you throw in another day. Could be. Bishleim Malidi, Rabbi Yochanan says to Reish Lakish, according to me, it comes out good. The Alfinim Miluim that says that we learn from. I say that we learn from the inauguration. You say we learn from Sinai. I say, Rabbi Yochanan said, we learned from the inauguration that they had to stay in the Oyel Mayed for 7 days. From the 23rd of Adar till Rosh Chodesh Nisan, they had to stay in the Oyel Mayed. So, Hainu D'Tanya, this will explain a brisa. See, Rabbi Yochanan is an Amira. An early Amira, but he's an Amira. So, there's a brisa that supports him, that's great. So, I have an earlier source. The brisa says, Zeh v'zeh mazon alav kol shiva. The Kohen Gadol, before Yom Kippur, and the Kohen that's preparing the paraduma, they get sprinkled on them each of the 7 days. They get sprinkled on them from the paraduma, the old paradumas. Mikol chatay shayisham, from all the samples of the paradumas that they had previously. They get the samples sprinkled on them for each of the 7 days. An extra thing to make sure that they're pure. Yeah, only 9. But apparently, look, Rashi over here says, "Vani shamati efer parashal Moshe leikala." Rashi says, "I heard that Moshe's never finished. Moshe's is still there. The original one is still there." So, the Habanami Hazabim Miluim. This, you know why this makes sense? Because we're learning it from Miluim. And by the Miluim, by the inauguration, there was also sprinkling going on. They sprinkled on them each of the days. Vayaz alar. Yeah, Moshe Rabbeinu did the avodah by the miluim, but the koyanim had to stay in the oil mayad for 7 days. They were there and watching. Aaron and his sons. No, we're learning from that whoever is doing the service needs to be right. Which and by Yom Kippur would be the kain gadol. By a paraduma would just be another kain, or I think it says the sagan or something. But according to you that you learned from Sinai, Hazab Sinai Mihavi was there sprinkling each of the 7 days on by Har Sinai? Amalei. So Rish Lakish responds to Rabbi Yochanan. He says, "Oh, Taimech Minicha, you think that according to you it's so perfect? B'miluim dam hachamayim. The comparison is not perfect. What were they sprinkling by the inauguration? The blood. They put the blood, and there was also they also put oil, but the sprinkling was, the pasuk says vayaz al Aaron, I think, vayaz al Aaron. Rashi quotes the pasuk. They sprinkled the blood on Aaron, and here they're not sprinkling blood on the kain gadol or on the kain that's doing the paraduma. They're sprinkling the water of the paraduma. So your comparison isn't good anyway.
Is this saying that there's, excuse me, is this saying there's already a paraduma before Sinai?
That's the point. That by Sinai there was no paraduma. There was just the blood.
The blood had the same
actually,
effect.
We're not discussing Sinai. By Sinai there was no sprinkling at all. By the Meluim there was blood.
Okay, and the blood was instead of the paraduma.
Well, that's the comparison here. Comparison is blood by Miluim, and by Yom Kippur and paraduma we sprinkled the water of the paraduma.
Gotcha. So
he's saying, but the comparison isn't good because the Miluim was blood. This is Rish Lakish responding to Rabbi Yochanan. Was blood, and here it's water. It says Holy Kasha. The Tani Reb Chia nichnas mayim tachas dam. Reb Naftali, what you're saying is that the water was in place of the blood. The water of the paraduma over there, they did blood, but now we do water. Taisvis over here tells me something interesting. It says, remember we quoted this pasuk, Kasherasa, pasuk that we quoted at the beginning, Kasherasa, as you did today. This is our whole source. Kasherasa b'yem hazeh tziv Hashem lasis l'chaper aleichem. Taisvis quotes Rashi on Chumash. Says that Rashi says, as you did today, so you shall do to atone for you. We were learning that means so you should do for Yom Kippur. So you should do to atone for Yom Kippur. So you should do for the paraduma. It actually means as you do today, so you should do for the rest of the 7 days. That's the Pirush HaPashat. The simple pshat it was only told for 1 day, and then he says you should do the rest of the 7 days. The Gemara has a drasha that says, so you should do for the paraduma, so you should do for the kain gadol on Yom Kippur, before Yom Kippur. Ela l'didach, but according to you, hazah b'sina mehavi, according to you, there was no hazah at all by Sinai. His Rabbi Yochanan is asking on Rish Lakish. Amalei ma'ila ba'alma. This concept that they would sprinkle, that's just an extra thing. Don't tell me that my whole source is wrong because they didn't do sprinkling there and they do the sprinkling now. That's just, just doing an extra thing. That doesn't mean that my source is wrong. If you added on, the sages instituted an extra sort of sprinkling to make sure that the kain gadol is pure, that doesn't mean that the source isn't from Sinai, even over there was no sprinkle. Tanya Kavaseder Rabbi Yochanan, Tanya Kavaseder Rish Lakish. There's a brisa that supports Rabbi Yochanan, and there's a brisa that supports Rish Lakish. Yeah, both seem to be quite clear. Tanya Kavaseder Rabbi Yochanan, the brisa that supports Rabbi Yochanan goes like this: with this, Aaron will come into the holies. This is the beginning of the service of Yom Kippur. In Achrimais, it says, with this, Aaron will come into the holies. What does it mean with this? B'masha amar be'inyan. With the halachas that it says regarding what was said previously. Maihi, what is it talking about? What was said previously? Binyan de Miluim. Regarding the Miluim. Ma'amar binyan miluim. What did it say regarding the miluim? That's the inauguration. Aaron pirish shiva v'shem Hashem echad. Aaron separated for 7 days, and then he served for 1 day. U'Moshe masalei kol shiva. K'dei lechanchai. And Moshe was given over to him for 7 days to train him. Ba'avoda afladaira. So too in the future generations. Kain gadol pirish shiva masham Hashem echad. The Kohen Gadol is going to be separated for 7 days and is going to serve for 1 day. Which day is that? Yom Kippur. And 2 Torah scholars, which are students of Moshe, Lafuki Tzedukim, as opposed to Tzedukim. They would do the service, some things they did a little different. They're given over to the Kohen Gadol to train him in the service for those 7 days. Mikan Amru, and here we say Shivas Yom Kedim Yom Kippur Mafishin Kohen Gadol Mebes Lishkas Par Hadron. So, the Mefarshim discuss why 2 instead of 1. I saw a note on the side over there of the Korah. What did he say? It says Professor about. It says 2 Talmidei Chachamim. Okay. Yeah, the answer. Maybe 2 is better than 1. Or anything else? Other than explaining it, 2 Torah scholars deviating from the top performance of the survey. Oh, that's what they said. Yeah. The Kohen Gadol can claim later, yeah? The Kohen Gadol could possibly claim later that the reason why I did it wrong was because they didn't train me well. So the 2 Kohanim say, we told him that they testify, we taught him correctly. Yeah, you can't get that excuse. Okay. So, yeah, it's a good teretz. Okay, now just like you do this for the Kohen Gadol, you also do this for the one that's preparing the paraduma. In both of them, this is the price that we quoted before. Both the Kohen Gadol before Yom Kippur and the Kohen that's doing the paraduma, you sprinkle on them for 7 days. Mikol chatayis shayisham, from all the chatayis, that means all the paradumas that were there from the earlier generations. Vim taimar, and if you'll say b'miluim dam hachamayim, that maybe over there it's different because over there they sprinkled blood and here you're sprinkling the water of the paraduma. Amrit nichlas mayim tachas dam. They've said already that the water is instead of the blood. V'oimer, and there's another pasuk. Kasherasa b'yem azet tziva shem lasis l'chaper alechem lasis tziva alechem lasis elamaisa para. When it says to do, that's referring to the paraduma. And l'chaper to atone elamaisa yom kippurim. This brisa is mamish Rabbi Yechanan's shita. So it's a clear support. I mean, everything that Rabbi Yechanan told us is in this brisa. That l'chaper is referring to Yom Kippur. That we're learning from, that they're sprinkling there, and we learn that from the miluim. Everything has to do with the miluim. The separating the Kohen Gadol for 7 days is straight from the miluim. The Gemara says, 1 second. When that pasuk in Parshas Achrimos, it says, with this, Aaron should enter, it says, what's with this? It goes on to say, with his par ben bakar for chatas and ayala, he has to bring the sacrifices to enter into the sanctuary. Amri, the Gemara answers, ila karban lechudei, if it was just for the karban bezais with this, lemakra bezeh. Bezais is a feminine. Could have said a par and an ayel are both male animals. Could have said with a feminine, with a masculine pronoun, not with a feminine pronoun. So bezais is a little strange. Or with these. Could have said with these. My bezais. What's he using the feminine pronoun? Shmamina tarti. We're learning two things. So why did we use a feminine? Because prisha is feminine, is nekeva, right? So we're learning from the separation, prisha, which means separation. We're learning from the bezais. Okay. My va'omer. Why do you need a second pasuk? We started off with bezais yavayarin, and then at the end we put in another pasuk that says, "Kasherasa b'yom hazeh tziva Hashem la'asis l'chaper." Maybe that means only the first Yom Kippur that they approached, which was, I guess, 6 months later, right? The Miluim was Rosh Chodesh Nisan. The two sons of Aaron went in when they weren't supposed to. You say, don't drink any wine. And with this, Aaron should go into the sanctuary only at the right times, right? That would mean 6 months later, Aaron will go in. It's not talking about every Yom Kippur. It was the following Yom Kippur. Inami, or maybe Kain Gadol Kamu the by Prisha. Or maybe it's only telling me that the first Kain Gadol needs Prisha, which means Aaron. Aaron was Kain Gadol until Elazar took over, right? Elazar was the Kain Gadol after, and then Pinchas was the Kain Gadol after. Abel Kain Gadol Baal Malai, but Stama Kain Gadol doesn't need to. So Bezais, that teaches me that the Kain Gadol needs to separate 7 days, is not going to tell me every Kain Gadol. It may tell me the first Yom Kippur. It may tell me the first Kain Gadol, which is Aaron. Doesn't tell me every Kain. So therefore, I need the pasuk Kasherasa b'yom hazeh. Tziva Hashem la'asis l'chaper means every Kain Gadol should separate 7 days. That's what it means. Okay, so Rabbi Yochanan gave us his explanation. We have a brisa that supports him. Let's go now to Rish Lakish. Tani Kavasei the Rish Lakish. Support for Rish Lakish. Moshe Allah ba'anan says like this. Moshe went up in the cloud. V'niskasa ba'anan. And he was covered by the cloud. V'niskadish ba'anan. And he was sanctified by the cloud. Kadei lekabel Torah liYisrael b'kedusha. In order to receive the Torah for the Jewish people with holiness. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, Vayishkein kvod Hashem al har Sinai, that the glory of God rested on Har Sinai. Zeh haya ma'aseh achar Aseres HaDibros. This happened after the Aseres HaDibros. Shehaya tchila l'arba'im yom, which this is the beginning of the 40 days. Yeah, Rashi's pointing out, this is the words of Rabbi Yisegli. Rashi's pointing out that Vayechasehu is not talking about covering the mountain. It's talking about covering Moshe. And it's talking about the first 6 days of the 40 days. Rabbi Akiva says no. Vayishkan kvod Hashem, the glory of God is on the mountain, Mirish Chodesh. That's talking about the first of Sivan. Before the Aseres HaDibros. And Vayechasehu ha'anan, look at this. Vayechasehu ha'anan, the cloud covered it. Lahar didn't cover Moshe because Moshe wasn't on the mountain then. He would go up and come down. He wasn't the full time on the mountain. The cloud covered the mountain. Vayikra el Moshe, and it calls out to Moshe, Moshe v'chal Yisrael amdim. Moshe and all the Jewish people were there. The 10 Commandments that Hashem says, He calls to Moshe and to the Jewish people. It wasn't that Moshe was going to do something different. It was just that he was going to say the 10 Commandments to everyone. And he gives honor to Moshe by saying that he calls to Moshe. Reb Nosson says, Leba Kosev el Lamarika Chilush Dirsha B'meyav L'simuk Malachi Asharis. Reb Nosson says, Reb Nosson follows the opinion of Rabbi Yossi Aglili, that this was Moshe separating, not the mountain being covered. This was Moshe separating for 6 days. When is it taking place? After the giving of the Torah. However, don't think that this is something that anyone that goes into the Machane Shechina needs to separate for 6 days. This is just the detox. Moshe had eaten food. He's going to spend 40 days. 6 days was first the detox to get rid of all the food that he had eaten. And then he'll be able to spend the other 34 days over there comfortably in heaven. Yeah, I heard the shiurim from, you may have known him, Moshe Rosenfeld, Aryeh Rosenfeld. He was a Breslover. He was the first one to go back to Amman. You know that was Aryeh Rosenfeld. He gave the shiurim Anach. They were available on. Anyway, he's describing the Malachim came down by Avram, and they ate. They ate by Avram, and they had to work off all of that extra weight because they couldn't get back up because they ate too much. So the time that they've worked off all of that extra gashmias, the time comes that they can go back up, and it's when they're speaking to Shimshon's mother and father, the Manoach, and they offer them food. They said, no, I just spent all this time working it out. I'm not eating now. And then it says the angel went up in the fire. Anyway, so that's what Reb Nosson's saying, that Moshe had to separate from food for 6 days because he was going to spend another 34 days together with Hashem. Reb Masya ben Charash Emelei Ba'Kasav La'ayam Alav Kadeshe Torah Nitenes Be'ima Bereses U'Bezeya. So this is to create the right feeling in Moshe before he enters in. He had to separate. He had to separate so that you should see that this is a very serious thing. It was a whole preparation and la'ayim alav, to put on him the fear of what's about to happen. That the Torah should be given with ema, with fear, bereses, trembling, bezeya. It's also a trembling. Shenemar ivdas Hashem b'yira v'gila barada. You serve Hashem with fear and you rejoice with trembling. My v'gila barada. What does it mean you rejoice with trembling? That in the place of rejoicing you have trembling. Now, what does that mean? Place of rejoicing, you have trembling. In the place of rejoicing, the giving of the Torah, that should be done with fear. The Yom Simchas Liba is a Matan Torah, right? Yeah, the place of rejoicing is. That's what the Gemara is saying here. Look at Rashi b'Matan Gila. Matan Torah shaluchais. Yeah. Matan Torah shaluchais. Rashi has to add that in because he's saying it's not really clear what Reb Masya ben Charash holds, but Rashi says Reb Masya ben Charash holds like Reb Yossi Aglili, that says that these 6 days took place after the Torah was given in order to get the luchas. And that means that the luchas need to come in a way that there's still fear. So how do we do this? We separate Moshe to show that this is something very serious that's about to happen. And then when he gets the luchas, it's given with that sort of trembling, with awe. The Maika Miflgi Rabbi Yossi Aglili Rabbi Akiva. What's the source of the machlekes Rabbi Yossi Aglili and Rabbi Akiva? Rabbi Yossi Aglili said that the 6 days that it's referring to in the pasuk, it's referring to the 6 days after the giving of the Torah, the first 6 of the 40. And Rabbi Akiva says it's the 6 days before the giving of the Torah. What's the source of that machlekes? The plug to the Hani Tanoi. It's machlekes. It's based on another machlekes. Now, one thing that you have to make clear before you read this is that there's Rabbi Yossi Aglili and there's Rabbi Yossi. It's going to throw us off a little bit. Rabbi Yossi Aglili is a friend of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yossi is a student of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yossi, his name is Rabbi Yossi ben Chalafta. Whenever the Gemara says, the Mishnah says Rabbi Yossi, it's Rabbi Yossi ben Chalafta. That's one of the 5 students. It goes like this. The Tanya was taught in a brisa. B'shisha b'chaydash nitna Torah liYisrael. On the 6th day of the month, the Torah was given. That's Vav Sivan. Right? Yom HaShishi. The 6th day. The important 6th day. Right? The 6th day of Sivan. That's the first opinion. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yossi says no, it was on the 7th. The 7th of Sivan, the Torah was given. Mandamar B'shisha, the one that says that it was on the 6th day, B'shisha Nitna, B'shvi Allah, on the 6th day it was given, and on the 7th day, Moshe went up the mountain. So that would fit with the opinion of Rabbi Yossi Aglili. No. Rabbi Yossi is arguing with the Tanakama. Okay, let's go a drop further. Manda Amar B'Shiva Nitna, B'Shiva Allah. The one that says the Torah was given on the 7th day. On the 7th day, the Torah was given, and on the 7th day, it went up. Okay, so now the Gemara is going to spell it out. Rabbi Yossi Aglili Savala Ketana Kama. Rabbi Yossi Aglili holds like the first opinion that the Torah was given on the 6th day. Damar B'Shisha B'Chedesh Nitna Torah. Hilkach Zeh Hayamaisa Achar Sersa Dibris. After the 6 days, then what happens? Vayishkan Kvayd Hashem Al Sinai, Vayachasewan and Sheshes Yamim, L'Maisha. The 6 days. Yeah, how did we learn this before? Before we learned this, that he says that the 6 days is starting from. No. Rabbi Kiva said the 6 days was from Rosh Chodesh. Rabbi Yossi Aglili Savar Lakatana Kamar Dam B'Shisha B'Chedesh Nitna Torah Elkach Zeh Hayamaisa Achar Sersa Dibris. So then this whole story of the 6 days takes place after the 10 commandments. There's another counting of 6. Vayishkan Kvayd Hashem Al Sinai. Well, yeah, he's going to be on the 12th. The 6 days will be over. On the 13th, he can go up. That was the kasha before. It's not a full 7 days. So we said it's Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. Okay. So Vayishkan Kvayd Hashem Al Sinai V'Chasei One Sheshes Yamim. That's L'Moshe. Moshe gets covered for 6 days on the mountain. Vayikra Moshe B'Yom HaShvi, and Moshe Shem calls to Moshe on the 7th day L'Kabuli Shara Torah, to receive the rest of the Torah. Okay. Visal Kedaitach, because if you're going to, it enters your mind to say Vayishkan Kvayd Hashem Rosh Chodesh, that it's talking about from Rosh Chodesh the way Rabbi Kiva wanted to say it. Vayachasei Wa'an and Lahar, and we're talking about that the glory of God, that the cloud covered not Moshe, because Moshe was up and down the mountain, that it covered the mountain. Vayachaseihu, it covered the mountain. Vayikra El Moshe B'Yom HaShvi L'Kabuli Aser Sedibris, and Hashem is calling to Moshe on the 7th day for what? To receive the 10 commandments. HaKabilu Mishisha. You already got the 10 commandments on the 6th. He holds that the 10 commandments was given on the 6th of Sivan. So if I say that the 6 days that the cloud is covering it, is referring to the cloud covering the mountain for the first 6 days, and then Hashem calls to Moshe on the 7th day to receive the Torah was given on the 6th. So it must be that the 6 days are after the Torah was given. We're talking about 6 out of the 40. But the cloud already left on the 6th. Okay. Rabbi Kiva Savalak Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Kiva holds like Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi held that the Torah was given on the 7th of Sivan. So how does this work? Well, 6 days the cloud covered the mountain, and on the 7th day, Moshe is being called to receive the Torah. According to Rabbi Kiva, it works out that B'Shivas b'Tamas Nishtabra Luchas, that the 17th of Tamas the Luchas were broken. Why? Esin Varba the Sivan. I have 30 days in the month of Sivan. 6 of them were before the Torah was given, right? Then I have another 24. Okay, well, either way, there's 24 days. B'Shitzar the Tamas. And then I have 16 days of Tamas. So 16 and 24 is going to be 40. Malu Arba'im Yaimin, that's a 40-day period. David Bahar, that Moshe is on the mountain. Ubeshivsar b'Tammuz Nachas. And on the 17th of Tammuz, the day after, he comes down. And he comes down and he breaks the luchas. Makes sense. The Gemara's question that we were about to ask is not going to be a question to you, because the way I explained it was according to the Gemara's answer, that the 6 were part of the 40. The Gemara doesn't know that yet, that the 6 were part of the 40. The Gemara thinks that there were 6 days that Moshe had to prepare before he could go up for the 40 days. That would mean that there's a total of 46 days, which is going to throw off Shivas B'Tammuz, the breaking of the Luchas, until the 23rd of Tammuz. They said, what are you telling me, Shivas B'Tammuz? There were 6 days before that, 6 days before the 40. Right, that's what the Gemara is going to ask. There were 6 days of separation. And then there's 40 days that he's on the mountain. The luchas weren't broken until the 23rd of Tammuz, according to this. Amalach Rabbi Aglili says, no, the 40 of the mountain is including the 6 days of the separation. Yeah, I should have taught this without giving you the end. I killed the end of the movie. So, okay. Amar Mar, the master taught. Vayikra Moshe, he called to Moshe, Moshe v'chol Yisrael Laimdim. Moshe and everyone is standing there. Messiah le-Rabbi Lazar. This is the support for Rabbi Lazar. He's calling to Moshe, and everyone is standing there. And what did we say before? We said that this was giving honor to Moshe. That's the way we explained it. Amar Rabbi Lazar, Yikra Moshe, Moshe v'chol Yisrael Laimdim. The pasuk is just coming to say, he's calling to everyone to give the Torah, but he's just saying, Moshe, everyone should hear that Hashem is giving honor to Moshe. Meisvei, the Gemara is a question. The pasuk says, Kol Loi. The voice was heard to him. It's referring to by the Ayel Mayim. Kol Elav. The voice was directly to him. Moshe Shama v'chol Yisrael Shama. That Moshe was able to hear, but the rest of the people were not able to hear. Now, this is a little bit of a problem, because we just said that Hashem calls out to Moshe. So to give honor to Moshe, that means everyone hears that Hashem is calling to Moshe. Now, if you tell me that when Hashem speaks to Moshe, no one else can hear it, so how is it giving honor to Moshe when Hashem says Moshe, right? If no one can hear it, Moshe says like kasha. It's not a question. At Mount Sinai, Hashem called to Moshe, and everyone was able to hear it. But afterwards, when Hashem would speak to Moshe from the tent of meeting, so that was the meeting. No one else was here. That's only Moshe could hear. But in the public, in that public event of the revelation, in the Almighty you couldn't hear, but by Sinai, everyone could hear. Next teretz. Iba Yasema like kasha. Very good. Shmuley Druin as Shmuley and the Gemara. If you want, you could say another teretz. Habekriya, habediber. This is the calling. Moshe, they heard. They said, Moshe, come, I have to tell you something. Habediber, but then when he came to speaking, that no one else could hear. That's another teretz. Rab Zrika posed this as a contradiction. Rami Krai Kamedi Rabbi Lazar. He put it as a contradiction and took him in front of Rabbi Lazar. V'amrila, now others say this differently. They say, Amar Rab Zrika, Rabbi Lazar Rami. Rab Zrika said that Rabbi Lazar posed this contradiction. One pasuk says, Moshe wasn't able to enter the tent of meeting because the cloud was there. And another pasuk says, that Moshe went into the cloud. It's a contradiction. The cloud's there, he can't go in, and then he goes into the cloud. How does that both fit? Malamed, this teaches us that Hashem grabbed Moshe and brought him into the cloud. The Bei Rabbi Shmuel Tana that was taught in the yeshiva of Rabbi Shmuel, Nemer kan b'toich, but nemer la'alan b'toich. One over here it says b'toich anan, and over there in somewhere else it says b'toich. What? Where? By the splitting of the sea. By Yavayu b'nei Yisrael b'toich hayam. The Jewish people went into the midst of the sea. Mal'alan shvil, just like over there was a pathway to go into the sea. So the ksiv amayim lam chayma, the water was a wall on both sides. Afkan shvil, when Moshe went into the cloud, there was a pathway that led him into the cloud. Yeah, the artists have to play with this a little bit. There was a pathway that he was able to go into, an open area in the cloud that Moshe was able to go inside. Okay, let's leave it over here. Have a good day, everyone.